name is Eleanor Sinclair, and I was sitting in family court listening to my husband of 15 years dismantle my life with the precision of a surgeon. He leaned close. His cologne, the one he started wearing last year, the one that smelled of sandalwood and secret meetings, stinging my nostrils. "Sign the papers, Ellie," Harrison Cole whispered, his voice a low, practiced hum of condescension. "It's a generous offer. Take it, or I promise you will walk out of here with nothing but the clothes on your back. I will bury you in legal fees. You will lose everything." His lawyer, a man with a jaw so tight it looked like it could crack walnuts, nodded in solemn agreement. My own lawyer, Miss Davies, a woman half his age with twice his integrity, placed a calming hand on my arm. I didn't need it. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't hysterical. I was perfectly, terrifyingly calm. Harrison looked at me, his eyes, the color of a stormy sea, filled not with anger, but with a bored sort of pity. He saw the woman he had created, a 42-year-old dependent, a former bookkeeper whose career had been a footnote in the grand novel of his success. He saw a socialite without a social circle, a mother whose son was away at a boarding school Harrison had chosen and paid for. He saw a woman he had systematically isolated, controlled and diminished, until he believed there was nothing left of the original. He was wrong. He didn't know that the quiet woman sitting across from him had already rewritten the ending. He thought this was his stage, his final triumphant act. He had no idea he was a character in my play, and the curtain was about to fall. I looked at the thick settlement document on the table, the one that signed away my rights, my future, and my silence for a pittance he would barely notice. Then I looked at the single, slim manila folder resting in my lap, my script. "Your Honor," Harrison's lawyer boomed, his voice echoing in the sterile courtroom, "we have presented Mrs. Coles with a more than equitable settlement, one that acknowledges her contributions to the home while respecting the fact that all significant assets were generated by Mr. Cole's business acumen, protected by a prenuptial agreement she signed willingly." Willingly. That was a word with a lot of flexibility in Harrison's world. I had signed it at 27, deeply in love with a charismatic real estate developer who promised me the world. He'd presented it as a formality, a way to protect his family's legacy. "It's just paper, Ellie," he'd said, stroking my hair. "It will never matter between us." For the first few years, it didn't. I was happy. I'd just been made a junior partner at a forensic accounting firm, a job I loved. I was good at it. I could find the narrative in the numbers, the story hidden in the decimals and discrepancies. Harrison was proud of me, or so I thought. He called me his brilliant girl. But after our son Thomas was born, the pressure began. It was subtle at first. "Don't you want to be home with him? We don't need the money." "That case sounds stressful, darling. You look so tired." He bought me a beautiful home in the suburbs, far from my office. He filled my days with charity lunches and parent-teacher meetings. My work, once a source of pride, was rebranded as a hobby. He started introducing me not as Eleanor Sinclair, the forensic accountant, but as my wife, Ellie. Slowly, methodically, Eleanor Sinclair was erased. The financial control was just as insidious. My name was on the household checking account, but all our major assets, investments, and his business, Cole Properties, were held in trusts and accounts I couldn't access. When I asked about them, he'd just smile that disarming smile. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about it. I've got us covered." He wasn't providing for me. He was shackling me with golden chains. I was a well-kept CEO of a company of one, with a budget set by him, my performance reviewed by him, my value determined by him. My friends from my old life drifted away. It was hard to relate to their career struggles and promotions when my biggest challenge was picking a caterer for the annual Cole Properties Charity Gala. His friends' wives became my circle. They were women who spoke of vacations and renovations, their identities so intertwined with their husbands that they were practically brand extensions. I felt like I was suffocating in silk. The breaking point didn't come with a roar, but with a quiet, soul-crushing little crack. It was my 40th birthday. Harrison threw a lavish party, of course. All his business partners, his family, including his imperious mother, Lydia, who always looked at me as if I were a piece of furniture she hadn't chosen, were there. He gave a beautiful speech about his rock, his beautiful wife. Then he handed me his gift. It was a small, exquisitely wrapped box. Inside was a platinum tennis bracelet glittering with diamonds. It was stunning. It was also completely impersonal. It was the kind of gift a man gives when he's trying to fill a space where genuine affection should be. Later that night, after the guests had left and the caterers were cleaning up, I was in our walk-in closet putting the bracelet away. I noticed a small, dusty box on the top shelf behind my winter hats. I pulled it down. Inside was the plaque I'd received when I was promoted to junior partner. It read, Eleanor Sinclair, for outstanding analytical acumen and unwavering dedication to the truth. I hadn't seen it in years. Harrison had said it clashed with the decor in our old study and had put it somewhere safe. I held the cool, heavy wood in my hands, a relic from another life. A life where I had a name, my own name, and a purpose beyond being his wife. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Harrison walked in then, loosening his tie. He saw the plaque in my hands and the look on my face. He didn't comfort me. He didn't apologize. He sighed, a sound of profound irritation. Oh, for God's sake, Ellie, are you still sentimental about that thing? It was a decade ago. Let it go. He took the plaque from my hands, his touch dismissive. You have a much better life now. That was it. That was the moment the illusion shattered. It wasn't just that he didn't value my past. He actively wanted to erase it. My accomplishments were an inconvenience, a reminder of a woman who existed independently of him. He hadn't just encouraged me to leave my career, he had buried it. And in that moment, I realized he was burying me right along with it. The woman who earned that plaque, the one with the unwavering dedication to the truth, was still in there somewhere. And she was furious. Hit subscribe if you believe that silence can be a weapon. Comment your city and share this with someone who's been underestimated. The next morning, I told Harrison I wanted a divorce. His surprise quickly curdled into rage, then into cold, calculated cruelty. That's when the threats began. The prenuptial agreement was brandished like a weapon. His lawyers sent letters that were masterpieces of intimidation. He told Thomas that I was leaving them, painting me as unstable and selfish. He cut off my access to the household account, forcing me to ask Ms. Davies to file a motion for temporary support, a humiliating ordeal designed to break me. But he made one critical mistake. In his arrogance, Harrison assumed the woman he had spent 15 years diminishing was all that was left. He never imagined that Eleanor Sinclair, the forensic accountant, was about to come out of retirement. It started in his home office. He was so confident I was a financial illiterate that he didn't even bother to change his computer password. One night, while he was out at a business dinner, I sat down in his leather chair, the one that smelled of his power, and I started digging. I wasn't looking for an affair. I already knew about that, and frankly, it was the least of his betrayals. I was looking for the money he was hiding from the divorce. At first, everything looked pristine. Cole Properties was a fortress of clean ledgers and impeccable tax returns. Harrison was meticulous. But I wasn't looking at the front door. I was looking for the cracks in the foundation. My old skills, dormant for so long, began to stir. It was like riding a bike. The muscle memory was still there. I remembered the patterns, the tells, the quiet whispers of numbers that don't add up. The first crack was a name, Apex Foundational Services. It was a vendor that had received millions of dollars over the past 5 years for geotechnical surveying and site prep. The payments were consistent, large, and always approved by Harrison himself. To a casual observer, it looked perfectly normal for a real estate development company. But the invoices were too perfect. The formatting was identical on every single one, down to the pixel. The invoice numbers were perfectly sequential, with no gaps, which is rare in any real business. It was too clean. It felt staged. I did a public record search for Apex Foundational Services. The company was registered to a P.O. box in Wyoming. The registered agent was a generic corporate services firm. There was no website, no phone number, no physical address. It was a ghost, a shell. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't just hiding marital assets. This was something bigger. For the next 3 months, I lived a double life. By day, I was the broken, defeated wife, playing my part, meekly attending settlement meetings where Harrison's lawyer would grind me down. By night, after Harrison was asleep, I would slip into his office and descend into the rabbit hole. I used a simple keylogger program to get the password to his encrypted financial server. Inside, I found the real books, the ones his corporate accountants never saw. It was a labyrinth of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and systematic fraud. Apex was just one of dozens. He was massively inflating his construction costs, billing his own projects for phantom services through these shell companies, and funneling the excess cash into untraceable accounts in the Cayman Islands. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was defrauding his business partners, his investors, and the IRS. Many of his recent projects were partially funded by federal urban renewal grants. He was stealing from the U.S. government. The scale of it was breathtaking. It was tens of millions of dollars. The brilliant girl he had dismissed had uncovered a criminal enterprise hiding in plain sight. If you're enjoying this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes a second, and helps this video reach more people who need to see it. Now back to the story. I knew I couldn't just use this information in the divorce. This was beyond a family court matter. This was federal. I copied everything onto a single encrypted USB drive. Every falsified invoice, every secret ledger, every international wire transfer. I documented it all, creating a clear, concise summary of the entire scheme, complete with flowcharts tracing the money. I prepared a case file so thorough, so undeniable, that it would have made my old boss weep with pride. Then I made a phone call. Not to a journalist, not to his partners. I called the main field office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The 2 agents who met me in a quiet corner of a library coffee shop were professional and skeptical, as they should be. They listened patiently as I laid out my story. They've heard from plenty of bitter spouses making wild accusations, but then I handed them the USB drive. I didn't give them the raw data. I gave them my summary report, a 20-page document titled Financial Analysis of Coal Properties and Associated Entities. I watched as the senior agent, a man named Clark, read the first page. His eyebrows shot up. He looked at his partner, then back at me. "You did this?" he asked, his skepticism melting into something else. Respect. "Forensic accounting was my profession before I was married, Agent Clark," I said calmly. "I have a knack for finding the story in the numbers." For the next 2 weeks, I met with them in secret. They vetted my findings, and every claim I made checked out. They were stunned by the completeness of the evidence. I formally agreed to become a cooperating witness. I signed the papers. Real papers this time, not the documents of my surrender, but the documents of Harrison's destruction. Living in that house, knowing what I knew, was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had to play the part of the beaten wife, crying on the phone to my mother, letting Harrison see me looking defeated. He would walk past me with a smug little smile, confident he had won. He'd leave the settlement papers on the kitchen counter with a pen on top, a silent daily reminder of my impending capitulation. "Time is running out, Ellie," he'd say, his voice dripping with false concern. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." One evening he came home early and found me in his office. I'd been sloppy, leaving a file browser open on his screen. My blood ran cold. He walked over, looking at the screen. It was just a list of mundane corporate files. I had closed the sensitive windows seconds before he entered. "Getting sentimental?" he sneered, gesturing to the screen. "Trying to figure out what you're losing?" "I was just looking for an old photo of Thomas," I stammered, my heart pounding. He laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. It's all gone, Ellie. That life is over. The sooner you accept that, the better. He shut the laptop. Stay out of my office. He had no idea. He was a king standing on a trapdoor, mocking the woman who held the lever. The final settlement hearing was scheduled. The FBI told me it was the perfect stage. They would be waiting. All I had to do was give the signal. If Sweet Retribution has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. And hit that hype button if you haven't already. Now back to the story. Which brought us back to this courtroom. Harrison's lawyer had finished his speech. The judge, a stern-looking woman named Judge Albright, looked over at me. Mrs. Cole? Do you have a response? Are you prepared to sign the agreement? Harrison smirked, leaning back in his chair. This was it, the final humiliation. No, Your Honor, I said, my voice clear and steady. It didn't even tremble. I will not be signing it. Harrison's smirk vanished. His lawyer sighed theatrically. Your Honor, with all due respect, Mrs. Cole is being deliberately obtuse. She has no grounds to contest this. She has no income, no assets of her own. That's not entirely true, Mrs. Davies interrupted, standing up. She held up the slim manila folder from my lap. We would like to submit one item for your review, Your Honor. It has a direct bearing on the division of assets, specifically the true valuation of Cole properties and the legality of its revenue streams. Harrison's lawyer scoffed. Objection, ambush tactic. We haven't seen this document. It's not evidence for the divorce precisely, Ms. Davies said, her voice calm. It's more of a notification for the court's situational awareness. Judge Albright looked intrigued. I'll allow it in chambers. We'll take a 15-minute recess. No, Your Honor, I said, speaking up for the first time. Harrison shot me a look of pure fury. I believe it's in the public interest for you to see it now. Here. The judge stared at me for a long moment, an unreadable expression on her face. Then she nodded slowly. Bailiff, please bring me the folder. The bailiff carried the folder to the bench. Harrison was shifting in his seat, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He still thought it was some bluff, some pathetic last-ditch effort from a desperate woman. He probably imagined it was credit card statements for a lover I didn't have. Judge Albright opened the folder. Inside was a single piece of paper. It was a letter on U.S. Department of Justice letterhead. I knew the contents by heart. It confirmed that I, Eleanor Sinclair Cole, was a material witness in an active federal investigation into wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering, with the primary target being Harrison Cole and Cole Properties. It stated that my cooperation had been instrumental and that a significant portion of the assets currently under consideration in this divorce proceeding were, in fact, the proceeds of criminal activity. I watched the judge's face. She read the letter once. Her professional mask was perfect, but I saw the slight widening of her eyes. She read it a second time, her expression hardening from judicial neutrality to cold fury. Harrison was whispering frantically to his lawyer, who was shushing him, trying to appear unconcerned. Judge Albright put the letter down. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. The courtroom was silent. She looked down from her bench, not at the lawyers, but directly at Harrison. Her voice, when she spoke, had lost all its previous warmth. It was a shard of ice. Mr. Cole, she said, would you care to explain this? Harrison's face went pale. Explain what, Your Honor? I have no idea what that is. This is a trick. She's vindictive. She's making things up. Is she? The judge replied, her voice dangerously quiet. Because this letter, signed by Assistant U.S. Attorney Mark Shepard, seems quite real, it alleges that your entire enterprise, the very foundation of the wealth you're so jealously guarding, is a criminal conspiracy. Harrison's lawyer jumped to his feet. Your Honor, these are baseless and slanderous allegations. My client is a respected businessman. Then he should have no problem discussing them with the two gentlemen from the FBI who are, according to the final paragraph of this letter, waiting outside this courtroom," Judge Albright finished, her eyes locked on Harrison. The color drained completely from Harrison's face. He looked at me then, truly looked at me, for the first time in years. And in his eyes I saw not just shock, but dawning, horrified comprehension. He was finally seeing the woman he had tried to erase, the brilliant girl, the one with an unwavering dedication to the truth. He started to speak, then stopped. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish. The arrogance, the confidence, the cruelty, it all just evaporated. In its place was raw, primal fear. He looked small. "Security," Judge Albright said, her voice ringing with authority. "Please escort Mr. Cole out of my courtroom." 2 bailiffs moved towards him. Harrison shot up from his chair. "This is a lie! She's a liar!" he screamed, his voice cracking. He pointed a trembling finger at me. "She did this, that bitter—" The bailiffs each took an arm. He struggled for a moment, his expensive suit bunching at the shoulders. The facade of Harrison Cole, the titan of industry, shattered right there on the cheap courtroom carpet. All that was left was a common, terrified criminal. As they led him away, his last words echoed in the room. "You'll get nothing! You hear me? Nothing!" The courtroom doors opened, and I saw the grim, waiting faces of Agent Clark and his partner. The doors swung shut, and Harrison was gone. There was a stunned silence. His lawyer stood frozen, his mouth agape. My lawyer, Ms. Davies, slowly sat down and let out a breath. She looked like she'd been holding for months. She gave my hand a squeeze. "You did it," she whispered. I didn't feel a surge of triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a profound, quiet, and bone-deep sense of release. It was the feeling of a heavy weight, one I'd been carrying for 15 years, finally being lifted from my shoulders. I just exhaled. The immediate fallout was catastrophic for the Cole family. Harrison was taken into federal custody. His assets, every last shell company and offshore account, were frozen by the federal government. The story was on the news within hours. The scandal was immense, wiping out the carefully constructed legacy Lydia Cole had spent her life polishing. She and Harrison's sister, Charlotte, who had once publicly called me a gold-digging embarrassment at a family dinner, were socially annihilated. Their friends stopped returning their calls. Their names were quietly removed from charity boards. They were ruined by the very image they worshipped. The divorce was put on hold, but it didn't matter anymore. The federal case took precedence. As a cooperating witness, I was protected. The government would ensure I was provided for from any non-criminal assets, and I was the primary claimant on any funds recovered through forfeiture. I wouldn't be a billionaire, but I would be secure. More importantly, I would be free. Thank you for watching this story about a woman who reclaimed her power and a man who was destroyed by his own arrogance. Financial abuse is real and affects millions. It's often invisible, a quiet form of control. If you or someone you know needs help, resources are available. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is document the truth and wait for the right moment. Subscribe to Sweet Retribution, hit that hype button to boost this video. And if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Share this with everyone who needs to remember that the truth doesn't need to shout. A year has passed. I don't live in the grand, empty mansion anymore. I have a small, bright apartment in the city, not far from where I used to work. The walls are filled with my things, my books, my art. On my desk, next to my laptop, sits a polished wooden plaque. Eleanor Sinclair, for outstanding analytical acumen and unwavering dedication to the truth. I didn't go back to my old firm. I started my own, Sinclair Forensics. I specialize in helping people, mostly women, navigate financially complex divorces where assets are being hidden. I untangle the lies their spouses have woven in numbers. I find the truth. My schedule is full. My son, Thomas, is back from boarding school. He lives with me now. It took time, but he eventually understood what his father had done. We're rebuilding our relationship, one honest conversation at a time. Harrison took a plea deal. He'll serve 12 years in a federal prison. I get reports from the U.S. Attorney's Office. His cooperation led to the indictment of 2 bank executives and a city councilman. The rot he created ran deep. Sometimes, late at night, I think about his final threat in that courtroom. Sign the papers or lose everything. It was the cornerstone of his power, the threat he believed would guarantee my submission. He was so certain he held all the cards. He never thought to ask what I held in my hands. He told me to sign the papers or I'd lose everything. He was right about the papers. He just didn't realize they were his.